Welcome back. This is News Desk here on KTN News. Thank you for staying with us going into the second hour of the broadcast. We're keeping track on what's happening at the Supreme Court. Of course, today is the final date for filing petition seeking to challenge the October 26th repeat presidential election, and that closes that closes on at midnight tonight. NASA has often insisted that they shall not legitimize what they call a sham election by filing any court petition. We do understand that there are some non-governmental organizations or civil society organizations that are seeking to file a petition or petitions this afternoon. Let's now bring in lawyer Steve Ogola, who joins us live from our City Center studios. Bwana Wakili, thank you for joining us and good afternoon. What do we know so far? Have you had maybe of any late petition that could be filed before midnight tonight?
Good afternoon, Ben. I'm not privy to any plans by anyone to file a petition, but we can expect that any Kenyan, because Article 140 of the Constitution provides that any Kenyan may file a petition within 7 days to challenge the election of the president-elect, and that today is the last day, so it's possible between now and 11:59 p.m. that any Kenyan will go to the Supreme Court to file. So we will just have to wait and see if there is indeed a petition in the offing.
Maintain that they will not file a petition because that will be akin to legitimizing what they have called a sham election. Where would this leave them, legally speaking? Would it be a sort of catch-22 situation?
Well, I think NASA may not, although they want to make us believe that they're not interested in a petition file, but we do know that if someone indeed files a petition, that they must care for that petition, because that petition will alter the legal field specifically for them, because if that petition is determined either way, it may have the implication of giving them legitimacy if the election is nullified, or denying them legitimacy if the election is validated. So I do believe that anyone who files a petition, that petition will certainly interest NASA, and will in as much as it will also interest Jubilee. And we can expect that NASA will be cited in that petition either as an interested party, or they may seek they may apply to be enjoined as an interested party.
In your view,
I think Jubilee will also probably do the same thing, because Jubilee must actually be in the petition, because they'll be cited as the respondents. You know, the declaration was in favor of Uhuru Kenyatta as the person who was declared as the president-elect. So naturally, yes, Uhuru Kenyatta will be in the petition as a matter of course.
Would Uhuru Kenyatta
Yes.
be a worried man, in your view?
Well, I think anybody whose election is being challenged certainly must be anxious because he cares for the preservation of his victory. Remember, IBC declared Uhuru Kenyatta as the winner of the October 26th fresh election, but there were significant questions raised in terms of the management of the election. The most obvious one is that, did IBC in fact really comply with the Supreme Court judgment that nullified the election? Because the Supreme Court said the electoral process, the election is a process, and that they needed to comply with the law every step of the way. So remember, in my analysis of what the Supreme Court said, the Supreme Court imposed a three-test standard. The Supreme Court said they were happy to say forgive anything, but not the test of compliance, openness, and competence. So when you're assessing compliance with the law, the question about illegalities and irregularities will emerge, and I see obviously what is going to emerge. The irregular gazettement of candidates after the printing of ballot papers, that is a question that will not go unattended. The second issue is the inclusion of Raila Odinga. Remember, Raila Odinga resigned on 10th of October, and IBC decided to mark time and make a decision on 11th of October, because IBC knew that on 11th of October, the High Court in the case of Ekuru was going to give a determination whether to include Ekuru and other candidates or not. So the question that will certainly find its way in the Supreme Court if an election petition is filed is, what was the consequence of Raila's withdrawal? Did it have the intended consequence of nullifying the election, cancelling the election, and requiring fresh nomination? so that by the time Ekuru judgment was being delivered a day later, that judgment, although beneficial in the sense that it opened up the race for everyone to participate, but it could not actually settle because it was given or delivered at a time when the election stood cancelled. So we can expect that question to take actually, that would be the question that would be the central plank in this petition, because if the Supreme Court is of the view that the withdrawal of Raila Odinga had the consequence of cancelling the election, then the election that was conducted on 26th of October was a nullity. That would be a very interesting space to watch, and we'll have to see how IBC responds to that. Because, Ben, if you allow to cite paragraph 290 of the 2013 Supreme Court judgment, it said that where you have two candidates contesting in an election, and IBC gazetted Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga on 5th of September as the only candidates to participate in the fresh election. That judgment says if there are two candidates and one abandons the election stands cancelled. But you see now the question was it immediately cancelled, Raila withdrew, or was it open to IBC to pontificate and reflect and then make a determination later? So that will be a central issue. The other issue, the third issue that may find itself as one of the issues framed for determination, the issue of the returning officers. Remember, the High Court found that the appointment of returning officers was irregular, although we are aware that IBC appealed that decision, but we can expect that it will find its way there and it will be examined with full effect. The other issue would be the voter turnout, because we saw that IBC was tweeting, the chairman was tweeting a figure of about 6.5 million voter turnout, and then later that figure was revised upwards. The question that IBC must settle definitively is that for those who are aware about election management, we know that the presiding officers were required to send statistical data via text message at 9 a.m., 11 a.m., 1 p.m., 3 p.m., 5 p.m. of the voter turnout to the constituency returning officer. The question that the Supreme Court may pose to IBC, what was the constituency returning officer doing with this statistical data sent via text message? Was it for their own amusement, or was it for compilation and then transmission to the National Tallying Center? So the point is this: it was indeed possible in law to know the exact voter turnout just moments after the close of voting, because there were that first level of sending the voter statistics via text message. Then later, after the counting and announcement of results, the presiding officer was also required to key into the KIMS kit the same figure, the final figure sent via text message at 5 p.m. to key it in there. Then they remember the Supreme Court asked during the hearing of the petition, the August 8th petition, if there was no network, how long does it take for network to pick so that IBC, the National Tallying Center, can have the final figure? So I don't think IBC will find it easy to explain the variation more than 24 hours later in the voter turnout. So I think that will be another key figure to watch. Then, of course, the last thing that might also be interesting to watch in this petition, the resignation of Akombe. You know, Ben, it has been downplayed. But I can tell you that in a judicial forum, that resignation will be examined with full effect, because Akombe said that IBC is not in a position to offer credible election. And some of her revelations were actually internal memos sent while she was still a commissioner, and she fled fearing for her life. What IBC should watch out for, they should not underrate the Supreme Court's ability to look at Akombe as a whistleblower who is in need of protection, you know, rather than a villain. If the Supreme Court takes the view that Akombe was indeed a whistleblower who cared for delivery of free, fair, and credible election, then IBC, they will shift the burden of justification that election was indeed credible despite the challenges. Because again, a day after Akombe resigned, Chebukati himself, he called a press conference and where he lamented that some of his decisions have been overruled. So the court would be interested to know what were these decisions that were overruled and what was their impact, if at all, in the management of the election. And IBC will then be hard-pressed to explain to the court and maintain the perception that although Chebukati expressed anxiety about election preparedness, although Akombe resigned in protest, saying that IBC was not ready, that there was partisan posturing in the commission and infiltration of external forces, that all these factors put together did not ultimately affect the delivery of free and fair election. These are some of the key highlights that we can expect to be in that petition, Ben.
Pointers, Bonakili, the issue of elections or voting not taking place in at least 27 constituencies, largely in the Nyanza region. And the much talked about minor Kiai case that the presidential election happens on the constituency level. How big of an issue could it be in a potential petition?
Thank you, Ben. I think that actually that is going to be one of the issues. So I think we've now isolated about 5 issues that are likely to find themselves in the petition. The issue of constituencies not voting will be hotly canvassed or contested in the Supreme Court because Article 138, sub-Article 2, provides that election of the president shall take place in each constituency. Now, we are aware that 27 constituencies did not cast the ballot. However, what may work for IBC, it would have been a more difficult explanation for IBC to make if IBC had opened polling stations, but people never went to cast the ballot. But in this case, where IBC was willing to open the polling station, but then polling was disrupted because of that climate of fear. Remember, Section 55B of the Elections Act provides that if IBC is of the view that it cannot conduct election in a particular constituency, then it may postpone and conduct that election at the nearest practicable time. And the second level of test is that if the results that have already been received are so significant that they may not be affected by the areas that have not voted, then IBC may actually proceed to declare the results. So the question that the court may be interested to know is this. When IBC was cancelling the election, was there truly a climate of fear for IBC staff and election material that the election could not go on? If IBC demonstrates that, then the court will excuse it for deferring or postponing the election. Then the second question the Supreme Court will ask, which IBC must answer, then in terms of the results received and the votes that were still outstanding in the areas that had not voted, if those areas had voted, would they have altered the overall result? If IBC satisfies the court that those results, had they voted, it would not have affected the results, then the court will then move to the last question, which would be, in terms of Article 138, sub-Article 2, which requires election to be conducted in each and every constituency, would we say that in a circumstance when IBC is happy to conduct the election, is willing to conduct the election, but then the constituents have not made it possible for IBC to conduct, that then they should benefit from that provision? That may be considered as a manipulation of the Constitution for some, let's say, partisan advantage. I think if the court adopts a purposive and harmonious reading of the Constitution, which says that the Constitution is not supposed to be abused or manipulated for partisan benefit, then it's possible that the Supreme Court might find and hold that the non-voting of those constituencies and the subsequent postponement under Section 55B would then allow IBC to declare the results. But we can expect for sure the petitioners to hotly canvass and move the court to find that irrespective of whatever happened, irrespective of the decision that IBC may have made, if those constituencies never voted, then no election took place. So we expect those arguments to come from both ends.
Right. If all these scenarios and issues that you talk about, if they are so weighty, how come, Wanawakili, nobody has filed a petition yet? It's 10 hours to that deadline.
We don't know yet because 10 hours is a long time. Maybe they're dusting it and putting the last signatures and verifying that every document is commissioned. So we'll for sure. There's still time. Kenya, we are also in the habit of filing things a bit late. We saw the other petition filed quite late in the night. So it's possible that this one could also be filed in the night, and it's not late until it's 11:59 p.m. That is when we can.
All right.
That is when we can really say that it's really late. But for now, let's just keep on. Let's keep watching. Let's keep waiting. But also important to say, Ben, it is not a must that every contested issue must be resolved at the courts. Kenyans may decide that they may have had problems with the manner in which the election was conducted, but they don't want to go to court. They can find other alternative ways of resolving those disputes. So it's not a must that Kenyans must go to court. But if they do go to court, then the judiciary, the Supreme Court, has an unqualified obligation to examine every issue framed for their determination.
Finally, what happens if there is no petition by 11:59 tonight?
Well, if there's no petition, then we can expect Uhuru Kenyatta to be sworn in the next 7 days. Article 140 says that if there's no, Article 141 says that if there's no petition filed, then the president-elect shall be sworn in within 14 days. Already we have spent the last 7 days. This is the 7th day since declaration of Uhuru Kenyatta as the president-elect. So we can expect that the assumption of office committee, which I'm sure has been put in place, if there is no petition, that committee will move with speed and ensure that the Uhuru Kenyatta is sworn in within the next 7 days, because the Constitution says the swearing in of the president shall take place 14 days, the first Tuesday after the 14th day from the date of declaration of results. So the natural consequence is that we move to the swearing in stage.
All right. Thank you so much, Bwana Wakili. Lawyer Steve Ogolla there with detailed information and analysis of the various permutations and possible scenarios of what could be happening. Of course, today being the last day for anybody dissatisfied with that October 26th repeat presidential election to go to the highest court in the land and file a petition against that. There is, it is right now, it is 2:15, so there's still close to 10 hours to go to that deadline.